Hello, and welcome to the Tune to Decay podcast, inaugural episode. I am your host, and my name is Rob. The purpose of this podcast is for me to have a place to spew my knowledge and thoughts on various punk bands, horror movies, and who knows what else. I invite you to sit back and join me. Today begins part one of my deep dive into the discography of Greg Ginn. It has been quite interesting revisiting, or in some cases, visiting for the first time, his vast output of material. I'm going to discuss every release chronologically, starting with the Black Flag catalog. My focus here is solely on talking about the music and random facts. I don't know everything, I'm just a longtime fan. My goal is to look into all the other random projects, but since it started with Black Flag, I felt it was important to include them. I won't be going into deep detail about the band Black Flag. There are many incredible resources available if you're looking for a detailed history of the band. I'll provide links which you should definitely check out. So grab a six-pack, get wasted, then brew yourself some black coffee as we dive into part one, Black Flag, 1976 to 1981. First, I would like to discuss the Panic Demo's Nervous Breakdown session from 1978. I am including a few unofficial releases that are historically relevant. I started with this recording containing 8 tracks. These are from the first Black Flag recording sessions back when the band was called Panic. The first 4 tracks can be found on the Everything Went Black compilation, which I will get to later. There's an alternate Wasted on here, as well as 2 alternate versions of I Don't Care. One of them just appears to be a poorer quality version of the other. The final track is an instrumental that seems to be recorded live. Keith refers to it as Opus 65 in B sharp. This track is interesting because even this early, Black Flag were playing instrumental dirges. Historically, this is very cool, but unless you are a diehard fan of the Keith era, this isn't essential. The tracks from Everything Went Black are the best of this bunch. Still, it ranks a 9 out of 10, and my favorite track from this batch is Depression. Next, this is where it really all began. SST-001, the Nervous Breakdown 7-inch EP from 1979. This is hands down one of the best debut EPs from any band. This record is over 45 years old and still kicks your ass up and down the street, and you thank it and beg it for more. I first heard this over 29 years ago, and it still sounds fresh today. Every song is a banger, and it is over so fast you'll want to play it 10 times in a row. Greg Ginn is the sole songwriter on 3 of the 4 tracks. Nervous Breakdown, which is one of the definitive Black Flag songs, Fix Me, my personal favorite from this record, and I've Had It, which we can all relate to at some point in time. He shares writing credit with Keith Morris providing the lyrics for Wasted, a classic that would find its way onto the Circle Jerks debut album, a move that was not well received from Black Flag. This record is absolutely essential and ranks a 10 out of 10. This will be the sole release from this lineup, as lineup changes were very common for this band. Up next is SST-003, the Jealous Again EP from 1980. Second release, time to shake up the lineup. Exit vocalist Keith Morris and drummer Brian Migdal. Enter vocalist Ron Reyes and drummer Robo. This lineup would be short-lived but is well known due to being featured in the essential punk documentary, The Decline of Western Civilization. Live, this lineup was impressive. Ron brought incredible energy with his performances, and Robo was a beast on the drums. This lineup didn't fare so well in the studio. They attempted to record an album with Ron, but it was aborted. They did manage to get this EP in the can before Ron departed for Canada. This is a worthy follow-up to the incredible debut EP. Considering all the songs are from the same era, how could it not be? Ron's angry teenage screams along with the tight musicianship make for another banger from Black Flag. 5 songs here, all killer. Greg Ginn is the sole songwriter on 4 of the 5 tracks. He shares writing credit with Chuck Dukowski providing the lyrics for the final track, You Bet We've Got Something Personal Against You, which also features Chuck on vocals. It's an attack on former singer Keith Morris. When Keith left Black Flag and formed the Circle Jerks, he recorded Wasted and I Don't Care for the Circle Jerks' debut album, Group 6. To be fair, he did write the lyrics to both. However, Black Flag didn't take too kindly to this, as I Don't Care was as yet unreleased by the band. They took the music to I Don't Care, written by Ginn, with the new words by Dukowski, and this punk rock diss track was born. As for the rest, who couldn't relate to Jealous Again at some point in their life, or No Values? Revenge is a stone-cold classic. I still get chills hearing Ron shout, "It's not my imagination, I got a gun at my back." The fact that people still don't get the sarcasm of White Minority over 40 years later is astounding. Another 10 out of 10 release, highly recommended. My favorite track is Revenge, but like the Nervous Breakdown EP, there is no wrong answer for this release. Next up, SST-005, the 6-pack 7-inch EP from 1981. Another release and another lineup change. Exit Ron Reyes and enter Des Cadena on vocals. The band would embark on their first tours outside of California with Des, so he became well known as the singer of Black Flag. His time behind the mic would be short-lived as he decided he wanted to play guitar instead. That aside, Des was a great singer for this band. Ginn has stated he was the definitive Black Flag singer. He also smokes as hard as a pack of Camel non-filters in the studio. The version of Six Pack here blows away the later version on Damaged. The songwriting is shared more on this one. Greg Ginn solely penned Six Pack and shares writing credit with Dukowski on I've Heard It Before. I'm not sure who wrote what, probably Ginn music and Dukowski lyrics, but it's a great track. Dukowski has sole writing credit on American Waste. This man churned out nothing but classics for this band, and this song is no exception. It's a highlight of the Dez era and my favorite track on this release. This is another home run. Highly recommended. Another 10 out of 10. Next up, we have the Louie Louie 7-inch EP from 1981. This single originally came out on Posh Boy Records and was later reissued by SST. We have two more songs from the six-pack lineup. That's right, no change for this release. The A-side is a cover of the oldie with new lyrics from Dez. Short and sweet, this is the band's definitive version of this song. B-side is a departure from the typical Black Flag sound at the time, but a definite preview of things to come. Damaged One is a 4-minute slow trudger penned by Ginn with Gadina providing lyrics. It is a great track that pummels your mind and your perception of punk rock. It's my favorite track of the two. This is a great release and is of course recommended, but it is very short. I'd rate this one a 9 out of 10. Before we dive into Damaged and the Henry era, I'd like to jump out of sequence for a bit and take a quick look at the two compilations that would come out later. This will put a cap on the first 4 years of the band and the first chapter of the Ginn Discography. Starting with SST 015, the Everything Went Black compilation LP from 1982. This collects unreleased demos from the early years of Black Flag. You get all three singers, so if you have a favorite, each gets plenty of time to shine. The Keith Morris tracks come from the Nervous Breakdown sessions and their aborted attempts to record an album. Keith was great, and it's a shame they never got to do a full album with him on vocals. My favorite Keith track from this remains Depression, but his Gimme 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 was a close runner-up. Ron Reyes' tracks stem from more aborted sessions from the Jealous Again era. My favorite Ron track on this is My Rules. Great song. I've always liked his Police story as well. The sessions with Dez contain many tracks that will later be featured on the Damaged album. Dez absolutely slays these tracks. Favorite Dez track here is No More, but really they are all pretty stellar. An excellent end to the musical portion of this compilation. The final track, Crass Commercialism, is a collection of promos and radio ads Black Flag did to promote various things. These are often hilarious and a lot of fun. There are many repeat tracks on here, but this is a great release and essential if you're a fan of the early stuff. Rating is a 10 out of 10. That brings us to SST 021, the first 4 years compilation from 1983. This combines the Nervous Breakdown, Jealous Again, Six Pack, and Louie Louie EPs with some comp tracks from the time. Since we have already discussed the EPs, we'll take a look at the two comp tracks. Clocked In originally appeared on the Cracks in the Sidewalk compilation released on New Alliance Records in 1980. Any working stiff can relate to this absolute anthem written by Ginn. The other track, Machine, originally appeared on the Chunks compilation, also released by New Alliance Records in 1981. This is a harsh, abrasive song penned by Dukowski and Dez. This compilation is absolutely essential and a great way to get all of these excellent records at once. 10 out of 10 for sure. Thanks for checking out part 1. Shoutouts to Corporate Rock Still Sucks by Jim Ruland, Spray Paint the Walls by Stevie Chick, Our Band Could Be Your Life by Michael Azarad, Get in the Van by Henry Rollins, and the You Don't Know Mojack podcast. Stay tuned for part 2, and don't forget to get real gone for a change. Welcome back to the Tune to Decay podcast. My name is Rob, and I am your host. Thank you for joining me for part 2 of my deep dive into the discography of Greg Ginn. Today I'm continuing my discussion about the Black Flag catalog. While there were several one-off and side projects during this era, I'm saving those for a separate discussion. Today we are on part 2 of Black Flag, 1981 to 1986. We start with SST-007, the Damaged LP from 1981. Dez decided he was tired of shredding his voice and wanted to shred a guitar instead. Ginn agreed, so they recruited Henry Garfield from small-time DC hardcore band State of Alert. He decided it wasn't punk to share a name with the cartoon cat, so he became Henry Rollins. This lineup finally made it possible to record the first full-length Black Flag album. From the opening drums of Rise Above to Rollins' anguished, howling screams closing out Damaged One, this record remains influential and important and one of the best hardcore punk albums ever made, even over 40 years later. The dual guitar attack on this record allows Ginn to solo wildly while Dez holds it down with the rest of the band. Songwriting has more contributions than previous records, with Ginn having 8 sole writing credits of the 15 songs. Rise Above, arguably the most well-known Black Flag song, the verse and title conceived by SST crew member Merrill Ward. A New Six Pack, TV Party, which went on to become something as close to a hit as this band ever saw. A Vicious New Police Story. Rollins really nails this one. Ask me today and it is my favorite on the album. Tomorrow that might change. A New Gimme Gimme Gimme, A New Depression, another one meant for Hank. Damage 2, and Life of Pain, all classics. Chuck Dukowski pens 2 absolute bangers on his own, What I See and No More, and shares credit with Ginn on Spray Paint the Walls and the incredible Padded Cell. Ginn's girlfriend at the time, Medea, shares a writing credit with him on Room 13, as well as on the Des Cadena and Robo-penned Thirsty and Miserable. Finishing up the album, Rollins gets his first credit with Ginn on a new version of Damaged 1. This version is an absolutely crushing, self-hating, self-destructing howl where you feel and become Henry's anger and pain. An absolutely essential record. Rating is, of course, a 10 out of 10. Next we have the Licorice Pizza EP from 1981. This was a super limited EP, 700 total I believe, that was given away for free to customers at the store Licorice Pizza. I have to assume they gave away some at shows too, but I didn't fact check that. This features the Damaged lineup doing Thirsty and Miserable and Life of Pain. These versions differ from the ones on the Damaged album. I believe these are Henry's first recordings with the band, but again, don't quote me on that. My favorite track of the two is Thirsty and Miserable. It's a 10 out of 10, but really only for the superfans. I would say neither version is better than their Damaged counterparts, but it's cool some alternate versions exist. Up next, SST-012, the TV Party 7-inch EP from 1982. Well, the band lost Robo on the way back from their European tour due to visa issues, so they got this little kid named Emil and banged out a new version of TV Party with him on drums. Life with the Flag didn't work out for him, so he was gone quickly and Descendants drummer Bill Stevenson was in. He plays on the 2 Ginn pen tracks on the B-side that round out this EP. I've Got to Run, my favorite from this, and a new version of My Rules. Both are very Damaged sounding and both are excellent if not somewhat forgotten tracks. The new TV Party isn't better than the Damaged version, but they thought they might have a hit with it, so what can I say? Nice try. 9 out of 10. This is essential for the B-side tracks. Moving on, we have the 1982 Demos LP. I think this is the last unofficial recording I will touch on, but it's kind of important, so I didn't want to skip it. The band recruited punk drumming legend Chuck Biscuits in 1982 and cut these demos with him. This is the Damaged lineup, but with Chuck on drums. This would be the only studio recording of this lineup. This features many songs that would later be included on the My War album, as well as 2 from Slip It In, and even 1 from Loose Nut. We also get 2 Des Pen tracks unavailable elsewhere, What Can You Believe and Yes I Know, aka No Martyrs. Both of these tracks make the recording worth seeking out alone. Many feel these demos are superior to their album counterparts. I don't entirely agree with that. I do think they benefit from the dual guitar attack in Biscuit's drumming, so they serve as great alternate versions. I wish this could get cleaned up and given a proper release. Anyway, this is essential for the superfans. I'd say Modern Man is my favorite here, and it ranks a 9 out of 10. That brings us to SST-023, the My War LP from 1984. I'm not going to discuss the legal problems the band encountered, as that has been discussed in detail elsewhere. By 1984, these problems were resolved, and Black Flag hit the studio with a vengeance. However, this is Black Flag we're discussing, so it is time to shake up the lineup again. This time we saw Chuck Dukowski, Des Cadena, and Chuck Biscuits exit. Bill Stevenson comes back on drums and stays for a while. On bass is the elusive, reclusive Dale Nixon. That's right, Dale Nixon, aka Greg Ginn, who handles the bass and guitar on this record. Side note, the name Dale Nixon has become a pseudonym for musicians to use when not being credited with their real name. Of course, Henry is back on vocals and will remain there until the band ends in 1986. How does the long-awaited follow-up to Damage stack up? For one thing, this is the record where Black Flag transforms from hardcore punk band to whatever you expect Black Flag to be, fuck you. For the next few years, Black Flag would release records that sound like nothing else and had a profound impact on future genres of music. Side A almost seems like the logical successor to Damaged. The songs are longer and more complex but retain that hardcore punk edge. Side A songwriting gives us the brilliant title track by Dukowski. This is a great song, one of the best in the entire Black Flag catalog, even if he claims it is about Ginn. He also writes I Love You, which is far from the love song the title implies. Ginn has 2 solo credits on this side, the haunting Can't Decide and Beat My Head Against the Wall, apparently his jab at their horrible experience with a major label. Side A closes with shared writing credits between Ginn and Rollins, Forever Time and The Swingin' Man. Two frantic, insane songs. I recommend looking up the Swingin' Man jam on some live recordings from a later tour where the band would jam this out for over 10 minutes. I saw them recently and they still jam it out like the old days. If Side A was a change of pace, then Side B is something else altogether. 3 songs, one solely credited to Ginn, Scream, and 2 shared with Rollins, Nothing Left Inside, and 3 Nights. These 3 songs are slow, trudging, self-hating, metallic oozes of sludge that will either leave you speechless or put you right to sleep. This is Sabbath-influenced heavy metal. Either you love it or you hate it. There really seems to be no in-between. When I first heard this at 13 or so, it was not what I was looking for. Not just the B-side, but the whole record except the title track. However, once I got older and listened more, I realized you are dumb when you are young, and this record is excellent. If you only like faster, faster, punk, punk, then this record and anything else Black Flag does going forward is not for you. My favorite track remains My War, and this ranks a 9 out of 10. Coming up, we have SST 026, The Family Man LP from 1984. So you thought My War was a radical departure, but saw this cool cover art and said, maybe this one is better. But you failed to notice because you were so distracted by the art that it clearly says a spoken word instrumental record on the front and back. Black Flag defies your expectations again. Side A is The Henry Rollins Show, with Henry having 6 sole writing credits. Family Man, Salt on a Slug, Hollywood Diary, Let Your Fingers Do the Walking, Shed Reading, Radis Norvegicus, and No Deposit, No Return. These are 6 spoken word poetry pieces. Henry would go on to become amazing and endlessly entertaining at spoken word, but these early works are not his finest hour. Side A concludes with the Ginn Rollins credited 9-minute epic called Armageddon Man. This is the only time the full band appears together on this release. Alright, I forgot to mention, time to shake up the lineup again. Out with the fake Dale Nixon and in with the real Kira Rossler on bass. This lineup remains stable for a while and tours the entire country. It is considered by many the definitive Black Flag lineup. Side B is the Greg Ginn Show. 4 instrumental jams, 2 credited to Ginn, account for what, and my favorite from this release, the incredibly long titled, I Won't Stick Any of You Unless and Until I Can Stick All of You. The other 2, Long Lost Dog of It and The Pups Are Doggin' It, are credited to Ginn, Kira, Stevenson. These songs are not punk, not metal, not jazz, not rock, but some sort of strange hybrid of them all. This is a taste of what would come later from Ginn's solo projects and Gone. Do not start your Black Flag collection here. I had a friend that started their Black Flag collection there, and they did not like Black Flag very much after that. This is a 4 out of 10 for the spoken word and a 6 out of 10 for the music, so that averages out to around a 5 out of 10. Next up, we've got SST 029, the Slip It In LP from 1984. Black Flag machine rolls on with another 1984 release. The lineup remains stable, and musically, it's sort of heavy metal with a punk edge, but never really either one of those genres. This is a solid record, and those disappointed by Family Man should find much to like here. Songwriting, Greg Ginn has 4 solo credits of the 8 songs, including the cool instrumental Obliteration, the very metal-influenced You're Not Evil, the absolute banger that is Black Coffee, and the album's title track, which contains one of the sickest riffs Ginn has ever come up with. Elsewhere, Ginn shares writing credits with Rollins on 3 songs. The poppy, almost happy sounding, but far from it, Wound Up, the dark, brooding Rat's Eyes, and the brutal, pre-power violence hardcore of My Ghetto. Rounding out this album is The Bars, my favorite track, written by Chuck Dukowski and Rollins. There are a few weak moments on here. Some of the metal doesn't work, some songs just don't work, but overall, this is a solid 8 out of 10, and definitely recommended. Next we are looking at SST 030, the Live 84 cassette from 1984. The Black Flag machine rolls on, not only in the studio, but on the road as well. They played close to 200 shows in 1984, this recording from August 26th at the Stone in San Francisco being one of them. This was originally only available on cassette until the late 90s when it finally had a CD reissue with a different mix. The band rips through 19 songs here, 7 from My War, 6 from Slip It In, 1 from Damaged, 1 from Family Man, a few oldies, and the as yet unreleased The Process of Weeding Out. Personally, I think Who's Got the 10.5 is the better live album. Here, Henry blows his voice out by the second song. There's some bad backing vocals, and the whole recording is very muddy sounding. I should note, the muddy sound is in reference to the cassette version. The CD version fixes this issue. I also dislike Henry's versions of the early material. I don't reach for this one very often as a result. I do like the live versions of The Process of Weeding Out, and I won't stick any of you unless and until I can stick all of you. This is of course worth a listen, and you may like it way more than me. 7 out of 10 for this one. My favorite track is going to The Process of Weeding Out. We return to the studio with the next one, SST 035, the Loose Nut LP from 1985. Black Flag continues to be prolific with releases into 1985. The lineup is stable, and the van keeps rolling. This was the second Black Flag record I got. I think this is some of their best material, right up there with Damaged. You get some fast rockers, some slow trudgers, and some stuff in between. Once again, the Black Flag sound evolves into something not quite rock, not quite punk, not quite metal, but some hybrid of them all. The songwriting is varied, with Ginn solely penning 3 of the 8 songs on here. Those being the title track, Bastard in Love, which, let's face it, we have all been in this relationship at some point, and the anti-party party song, Annihilate This Week. All excellent tracks. There are 2 co-writes with Rollins, the self-hating This Is Good, and slow trudger Sinking, which is great. They do a new version of Dukowski's Modern Man from the 82 demos, and it's my favorite song on the album. Rollins and Kira share writing credits on the punky rockers I'm the One and Best One Yet. Closing out the record is Bill Stevenson's only solo writing credit in Black Flag, The Haunting, Now She's Black. I think this record is excellent, and it is highly recommended. 10 out of 10 on this one for sure. Coming up next, we have SST 037, The Process of Weeding Out EP from 1985. The year is 1985. Those Black Flag guys have put out yet another record with a cool-ass cover and title. The cool title is also a bit of a mystery. Is it about smoking weed? Greg Ginn was into that at the time, so it's a possibility. Is it about weeding out their singer, since this album is instrumental? Is it about weeding out their own audience? We may never know. The liner notes from Ginn are also vague. He makes it clear this is an anti-authority record, a record that doesn't need lyrics to convey its message. There's no Henry Rollins here. This is the Greg Ginn show again. 4 instrumental jams similar to the B-side of Family Man. 3 of these are solely written by Ginn. The last song, Southern Rise, is credited to Ginn, Kira Stevenson, and is loud, funky, and discordant. The EP opens with the 9-minute epic, Your Last Affront. Screw the Law, the shortest one on the record, follows, reminding us that cops are not welcome here. My favorite track on the record follows, which is the title track. I really dig all the Black Flag instrumental stuff. They were even doing full instrumental live sets around this time. I bet those left people scratching their heads. I think it was ballsy then and remains interesting today. I rate this an 8 out of 10, but this is not for everyone. Despite the cool cover, this is yet another record that you should not start your Black Flag collection with. Also, on a side note, don't start your collection of any band with an EP from 9 years into their career. Just saying. Next up is SST 045, the In My Head LP from 1985. Black Flag put out one more full-length album in 1985. This turned out to be the final album until Greg Ginn decided to resurrect the band in 2013. 9 tracks with the same lineup as the last few records. This album is incredibly good, and comes in as my number 3 Flag record. Once again, the Black Flag sound evolves, always touching various genres but not committing to any one in particular. This was originally intended to be Greg Ginn's solo album, but Henry put lyrics to several instrumentals and it became a Black Flag record. Ginn writes 5 of the 9 songs on his own: The Crazy Girl, which is actually pretty punkish for this phase of the band, the almost creepy sounding Black Love, album highlights Retired at 21 and Society's Tease, and the almost poppy It's All Up to You. The other 4 tracks are Rollins writing the lyrics to Ginn's music. Album opener Paralyzed is a banger. White Hot, the almost hit single Drinking and Driving, and In My Head, my favorite track here. The CD version adds 3 bonus tracks that will turn up on the I Can See You EP that I'll talk about later. There are a few weak moments on this one, but the good is so good that it outweighs them. I give this one a solid 9 out of 10. Very recommended. So Black Flag breaks up following a lengthy tour in 1986. The band may be over, but the releases are not quite done yet. Next up, SST 060, the Who's Got the 10.5 LP from 1986. This album poses the all-important question of who's got the 10.5-inch dick. Spoiler alert, it's Kira. Okay, maybe on the road it was funny between the band, but even when I first heard this, around age 12 or 13, it really wasn't even funny then. This is a live album recorded in Portland in 1985 during the Loose Nut tour. This is also Black Flag we were talking about, so once again, it is time to switch up the lineup. Bill Stevenson is out, and Anthony Martinez is in. He would remain the drummer until the band breaks up in 1986. He crushes it here. Really excellent drumming on this recording. This record is great. The recording is clear and crisp. There's also a recording out there that has the full set, which features even more songs. That is worth seeking out. The version I'm referring to now is the CD version, which features 6 extra songs than the LP. The band smokes through the entire Loose Nut album, minus Now She's Black. They play these slightly faster than the album versions, and they really jump out at you. These songs are really great live. There's also 2 oldies, 2 from In My Head, 1 each from My War, Slip It In, and Damaged, and an instrumental jam that is exclusive to this release. The extended Slip It In, Gimme 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 was always ridiculous. Here's where you find the answer to the album title question. My only real complaint here is Henry was never great at the old songs, and he makes Wasted sound like Van Halen or some shit. Otherwise, this record is a must-have for fans of this era. Solid 9 out of 10 for this one. Coming up after this, SST 081, the Annihilate This Week EP from 1986. This is 3 tracks that appear on the CD version of Who's Got the 10.5. I guess if you only have the vinyl version, this is worth owning, but if you have the CD, you can skip it unless you were trying to own every record they've done. I have a 12-inch single, but it is also available as a cassette and CD single. The 3 tracks are Annihilate This Week, Best One Yet, and Sinking. Nothing worth covering here that wasn't already mentioned. Still a 9 out of 10 for the music. This was followed in 1987 by SST 166, the Wasted Again compilation LP. This record serves as a greatest hits of sorts, the hits being fun songs. There's no new or unreleased material to be found on here. So let's break down what is here. From the Keith Morris era, there is Wasted, I Don't Care, I've Had It, and Gimme Gimme Gimme. Only Jealous Again appears from the Ron Reyes era. Representing the Dez era, there is Louie Louie and the single version of Six Pack. The Henry era has 1 each from Damaged, Slip It In, and In My Head, and 2 from Loose Nut. Nothing from My War is represented here. I guess the theme of the comp is, quote, fun songs, and there's nothing fun on My War. This does serve as a good intro to the band. It represents all 4 singers and all styles of the band. Otherwise, for longtime fans, this is another one for the super fans. I'll rate this a 7 out of 10. I would have picked some different songs personally and skipped the loose theme. The final release from Black Flag in the 80s came in 1989 with SST 226, the I Can See You EP. This release is likely one for the superfans or vinyl-only collectors. 3 of the 4 tracks can be found on the CD and cassette versions of In My Head. The 4th was released on the Love Dolls Superstar soundtrack, so this EP collects those 4 tracks for those of you that missed them. If you have the CD version of In My Head, but not the soundtrack, then I would say you still need this for Kickin' and Stickin'. Speaking of which, let's get into the tracks. Ginn pens the title track, An Exercise in Paranoia. Rollins and Ginn share credit on Kickin' and Stickin'. I recommend seeking out a live recording from the '86 tour of the Kickin' and Stickin' Jam, where the band would jam this song out for like 10 minutes. Up next is the highlight of the EP, Out of This World by Kira and Bill Stevenson. This is a great song and my favorite track on this one. You Let Me Down by Ginn and Rollins closes this one out. This rates a solid 8 out of 10 for me. Grab this if you don't have In My Head on CD. A note on various artist compilations. Black Flag appeared on many compilations and likely will continue to. Most of the tracks can be found on studio albums and various collections the band put out. I would like to point out 2 comp tracks that are unique and can't be found on anything else. First is TV Party from the Repo Man soundtrack in 1984. This version is different from the versions on Damaged and the TV Party single. This has the Damaged lineup. I found some interesting information about this recording in Henry Rollins' book, Broken Summers. Henry says, TV Party was the song that brought me to Cherokee Studios for the first time. When the film Repo Man was coming out, I guess the director asked Greg if TV Party could be used for the soundtrack, and he said okay. Greg took the advance, and we went into Cherokee and redid the vocals on the single version of the song. We updated the TV shows from the previous version, and I redid the lead vocals. Next, we have the anthology horror movie from 1983, Nightmares. In addition to featuring Lee Ving from Fear in a small role, Black Flag is prominently on the soundtrack in the movie. P.S. There will be an upcoming Fear deep dive. Stay tuned. There is a version of Rise Above with the Damaged lineup that is different from the Damaged LP. If anyone has any info on this recording, drop me a line. I'd love to hear about it. No soundtrack was issued for this movie besides a score, but watch the second chapter, The Bishop of Battle, and you'll hear the song. There is one more live recording that is worth mentioning, and that is Live at the On-Broadway, 1982. This release is not official, but back in 2010, it was confusing if it was or not. This came out on CD and digital. The recording is from 2 nights at the On-Broadway in 1982, July 23rd and 24th. This features the 82 demos lineup with Dez on guitar and Chuck Biscuits on drums. The sound quality on this is excellent, from the soundboard I would guess. The first set opens with Yes I Know from the 82 demos. Someone, presumably Dez, tells Henry the title is No Martyrs. Other things worth noting from the first set: Can't Decide has completely different lyrics from the album version. Scream is an early version with no lyrics and was featured on the Rat Music for Rat People compilation, which was later reissued with Wasted from this set as well. Henry continues to do poorly with the first 4 years' material, but both sets are great. Lots of Damaged and early material in these sets. Both feature a long, slow jam on Damaged 1 called My Life. Set 2 opens with the early, no lyrics version of Scream, and is followed by a track called Jazz Poetry. It is not an unreleased song. It is just ridiculous banter and noise. Completionist, this is definitely worth tracking down, especially for fans of this era of the band. This ranks a solid 8 out of 10. As I mentioned before, Greg Ginn decided to end Black Flag in 1986. I've covered the posthumous releases from the 80s, the Live at the On-Broadway recording. Otherwise, Black Flag remained silent for a long while. In 2003, Ginn decided to reform Black Flag for a 3-night stand as a benefit for cat rescue, something he was passionate about at the time. These shows were not well received. I don't think they deserved the flack they got. I wish I could have gone. Recordings of all 3 nights are out there. I listened to them all, and I don't think they are bad. Feel free to judge for yourself. This now brings us to 2013 and SST 391, the What The LP. Out of nowhere in 2013, Ginn announced Black Flag is back together with Jealous Again singer Ron Reyes for a new album and tour. What the is right? Now, I personally don't care what the motivation was, be it playing at Ron's 50th birthday bash, flag forming, something else entirely, I don't care. Greg Ginn reforming Black Flag was good news to me. For me, Ginn is the band, so he can choose who he wants to play with. It is Black Flag if Greg Ginn is in it. This reunion with Ron would be short lived. He was out of the band mid tour before the album was even released. I did get to see them before Ron was out, and they played 6 or 7 songs from this record. So now, let's dive into the first Black Flag album in 27 years. The title. Yeah, alright. It is not the strongest, but it was my reaction when I heard the news at the time, so I guess it's fitting. The artwork is a drawing by Ron, and yes, it is goofy. No, it is not a good album cover, but fortunately, you play a record and not the cover. The lineup for this album features Ron Reyes on vocals, making his full-length debut on a Black Flag record. Dale Nixon is back on bass, having been awakened from slumber by a strong desire to play bass in Black Flag again. Just kidding. Actually, that is Greg Ginn's alter ego, and the man himself is back playing guitar and theremin. Yes, theremin. Ginn's session and sometimes live drummer Gregory Moore rounds out this lineup. The album contains 22 songs, more than any other Black Flag record in the past. All songs are credited to Ginn and Reyes, with Ginn providing the music and Ron the lyrics. One solo credit for Ginn, the album closing track, Off My Shoulders. This record is panned and pretty much hated universally. I'm not in that camp. Let's discuss some positives, since all anyone can spew is negativity about this album. Ron Reyes hasn't missed a beat. He picks up just where he left off on Jealous Again and still sounds like an angry teenager. Cool. He was never my favorite singer in the early days, but he does a very solid job here. Ginn is there with the classic Ginn tone, and his guitar playing is as good as ever. Ginn's bass is there to play along with the guitar, but there are actually a few cool bass moments on this record. Yes, he plays theremin on some of these songs as well. No, it's not as bad as one would think. I actually dig it. It adds some interesting sounds to the songs. Moore was not the best Black Flag drummer live, but I think the complaints about the drumming on the record are excessive. It's fine. The short, punky songs on here seem more like the logical follow-up to Damaged rather than in my head. The majority of the songs barely crack the 2-minute mark. I would assume this style is more suited to Ron than the more avant-garde stuff the band was doing at the end of the original run. I'm defending this record, but I'm not going to outright lie. It is a mixed bag. There's some really solid material here, worthy of repeated listening. A big problem is the weaker songs are not at all memorable. They really needed to cut like 10 tracks or make this an EP. I think would have been received better and got far less shit. I'm going to briefly give my take on each track now. My Heart's Pumping, the album opener. I dig this one. Ginn crams a lot in here musically. I think this is a good example of the theremin working in a song. Down in the Dirt. This track was a digital single and is solid. The theremin is cool on this one too. The longest track on the album at 3 minutes and 30 seconds. Blood and Ashes. 3 for 3 so far. I like the change from mid-tempo to fast in the chorus. Good vocals from Ron on this one too. Now is the Time. This track is weak, maybe downright bad. The mid-tempo and crooning sink this for me. This should have been cut. Wallow in Despair. This was another digital single. I dig this one musically, but it has pretty lousy lyrics. Definitely a weaker track. I wouldn't have picked this as a single. Slow Your Ass Down. Another weak track in the lyric department. Musically is decent and moves along quickly, but ultimately, it is weak. It's so absurd. Following the pattern of musically decent but lyrically bad. Another weak one. Shut Up. This song is a total miss. This should have been cut. This Is Hell. Accurate title for this total mess. This should have been cut too. Go Away. After a string of misses, this song is actually pretty good. The Bitter End. Another miss. This song should have been cut. The Chase. This was released as a digital single. This one is really solid. Probably the best song on the album. I'm Sick. Another miss. This one should have been cut. It's Not My Time to Go Go. Dumb title aside, this one's actually pretty good. Lies. This one is decent. The chorus stinks, but the rest is catchy. Get Out of My Way. Another miss. This should have been cut. Outside. This one is really good. Another contender for best song on the album. No Teeth. Quick and catchy. This one is decent. To Hell and Back. Another okay one, but probably should have been cut. Gimme All Your Dough. Same as before, decent, but probably should have been cut. You Gotta Be Joking. Another miss. This one should have been cut. And finally, Off My Shoulders. The sole Ginn composition closes out the record. This one is pretty decent. It makes a good ending song. How do we begin to rank this? Well, more than half the songs range from decent to really good. I'm giving this a 6 out of 10, slightly more than half. You have to sift through a lot, but there is enjoyable material to be found on here. People can hate. Nobody is being forced to listen to this record. As of 2025, Black Flag is still together and touring. They may not have made any new music, but I do go see them whenever they are in town, and I always have a good time. This concludes part 2, and my discussion of the Black Flag portion of the Greg Ginn Discography. Thanks for checking this out. Shoutouts to Corporate Rock Still Sucks by Jim Ruland, Spray Paint the Walls by Stevie Chick, Our Band Could Be Your Life by Michael Azarad, Get in the Van by Henry Rollins, and the You Don't Know Mojack podcast. Thanks for your invaluable research. Stay tuned for part 3, Solo and Side Projects, 1983 to 1987. You are listening to the Tune to Decay podcast. I am your host. My name is Rob. Welcome back to my deep dive on the discography of Greg Ginn. I'll be discussing all solo and side projects from Bias to Tom Tricoli's Dog and anything and everything in between. I am going through each release chronologically. If you would like to hear my discussion on the Black Flag discography, listen back to episodes 1 and 2. Today, I'm discussing projects and records from 1983 to 1987. Much of this material was recorded while Black Flag was still active. First up, we have Elevator, Jam Number 6. This was released in 1983 on New Alliance Records' The Mighty Feeble compilation, NRA 013. This instrumental track was recorded in December 1982 and features Greg Ginn on guitar, Mike Watt on bass, and Bill Stevenson on drums. That is all the info they give you on the back of the record. This was a tape recorder only compilation, and all songs were recorded on a tape recorder, including this one. I couldn't really find any good info on this. I assume Watt needed some extra tracks for the comp, and they had a little jam session that birthed this track. I could be totally wrong about that. Anyway, this is a 1 minute and 25 second funky instrumental jam. I suspect there is a tape somewhere with more that will never see the light of day. It's a cool track, definitely fits in more with Gone than Black Flag. The comp is an interesting curio. If you can find it cheap, it's worth picking up. 8 out of 10 for the track. Next we have SST 036, the October Faction self-titled LP from 1985. October Faction was a supergroup of SST-related people. The band was completely improvisational and would open for Black Flag with no set songs. They would just go out and jam for a while. This album was recorded August 26, 1984 at the Stone in San Francisco. This was the same night the Live 84 Black Flag album was recorded. The band on this recording consists of Greg Ginn on guitar, Joe Baiza from Saccharine Trust on guitar and vocals, Chuck Dukowski on bass and vocals, sometimes Black Flag roadie, merch guy, and member of his own band Tom Tricoli on blues harp and vocals, Bill Stevenson sitting in on drums for usual drummer Greg Cameron from SWA, and even Henry Rollins shows up laying down some percussion. This is an impressive lineup of people. I'm a fan of many of the Greg Ginn projects to come, but I find this one to be a hard miss. I respect and admire these musicians greatly, but this one is just not it. As I mentioned before, this is entirely improvised. The music is credited to the band, and the lyrics to whoever was singing the song. So there isn't much to discuss as far as who wrote what. I have the LP version, and it has the tracks broken up, unlike the CD version, which just makes this thing one long track. The track titles are pretty much the best part of this record. Side A features such musical masterpieces as It Don't Mean Shit, Todo Para Mi, which will come up in a better version on the Tom Tricoli's Dog LP, You, Me, and A Trail of Tears. Side B epics include 10-Hour Drive, Gimme a Quarter, 25 cents for the bus, and Bad Acid. I don't have much more to say about this one. I don't have a favorite track, and I don't recommend this unless your curiosity is that strong. 2 out of 10 for this one, only because it is slightly better than the second album, somehow. Side note, the song I Was Grotesque on the Blasting Concept 2 compilation is a cut-up version of one of these songs. I'm not going to bother to check or listen to find out which, but I felt it was worth a mention. Moving on, we have SST 047, the Tom Tricoli's Dog LP from 1985. Tom Tricoli's Dog was a short-lived project featuring sometimes Black Flag roadie and merch guy Tom Tricoli on vocals and guitar, Greg Ginn on bass, and Black Flag roadie Davo on drums. The band opened for Black Flag on their 1985 tour. They recorded one album, so let's take a look at it. The record is very classic rock influenced. There's not much jamming or experimentation. Instead, you get straightforward classic rock and roll with occasional blues and acoustic numbers. The songwriting here is mostly the Tom Tricoli show, but Greg Ginn receives credit on 2 tracks, Davo's Boogie and Katie and Elmo. They do a new version of Todo Para Mi from the October Faction record, but that's as tripped out as this gets. Chuck Dukowski gets a writing credit for that one and drops some vocals on side A closer, Slow Dancing. Des Cadena stops by to sing and play acoustic guitar on old blues cover, Play With Your Poodle. John Doe from X drops in, under an assumed name, to sing on Bob Dylan cover, Girl from the North Country. My favorite track on here is Camarillo. No, not the Fear song, on side B. It is the closest they come to punk, but it's just a fast rock tune. Good track. I'm just not a classic rock guy. If that is your thing, then this is definitely recommended. You'll find a lot to enjoy here. It's just not really my thing, so 5 out of 10 for this one from me. If you dig this record, I recommend checking out the You Don't Know Mojack podcast episode they did on this with Tom Tricoli. Very informative. Next we got SST 050, the Minute Flag 12-inch EP from 1986. Here we have another SST supergroup featuring all the members of Black Flag and all the members of the Minutemen. This was recorded March 3rd, 1985. Black Flag were recording Loose Nut, and the Minutemen had just finished recording Project Mersh. 13-year-old me was so excited to get this. I couldn't wait to hear what these two excellent bands did together, and boy, was I disappointed. This is mostly experimental, jammy music. Both bands agreed this wouldn't be released until at least one of the bands broke up. Unfortunately, the following year, D. Boone died tragically and the Minutemen disbanded. Not long after that, Black Flag called it quits, so this came out and we have 4 tracks here. All credited to everyone in both bands except Henry Rollins, who only appears on track 1, Fetch the Water, doing backing vocals. It is the only song on the record with any vocals, the lead handled by D. Boone. The other 3 songs are instrumental jams. They groove all right, they're cool to smoke weed to, but if you're looking for punk, there's none to be found here. My favorite track goes to Fetch the Water. This is an interesting curio, but not really recommended. 4 out of 10 from me on this one. That brings us to SST 056, October Faction, the second factualization LP from 1986. We discussed October Faction earlier in this chapter. To quickly recap, They are an SST supergroup that makes experimental improvisational music. Unlike the first record, which was recorded live, this was a studio recording. The band on this recording consisted of Joe Baiza on guitar and vocals, Greg Ginn on guitar and vocals, Chuck Dukowski on bass and vocals, Greg Cameron on drums, and Tom Tricoli on vocals and blues harp. There are 2 tracks. Tom Tricoli is credited with lead vocals on Pocahontas, Joe Baiza with lead vocals on the second track, Sam, with Chuck Dukowski and Greg Ginn also providing vocals. Tom Tricoli goes into great detail about this record on the You Don't Know Mojack podcast. I highly suggest checking that out. Let's discuss what we have here. Basically, everyone went into the studio and recorded their parts without listening to what the other guys did. They mixed it all together, and this is the result. Pocahontas goes on for 33 minutes. I have the LP version. It takes up the entire side A and half of side B. Sam rounds out the B side for 8 minutes, and that is the edited version. If you have the CD, it goes on there for 32 incredibly long minutes. The band, unsurprisingly, called it a day after this. This is definitely worse than the first one, and like that record, there is no favorite track, and this is not recommended. 1 out of 10 for this one, unfortunately. Following that, we have Chicona Youth, Burnin' Up. This one needs some explanation. Following the death of D. Boone and subsequent breakup of the Minutemen, Mike Watt was not having the best of times, understandably. He spent some time with the band Sonic Youth while they recorded their first album for SST. He even played bass on 2 tracks. From these sessions, Chicona Youth was born, a gag band celebrating Madonna. A 7-inch single was released on New Alliance Records, NAR 030, Burnin' Up. You may find yourself asking, what does this have to do with Greg Ginn? The A-side of the single finds Mike Watt covering Madonna and playing all the instruments, with Greg Ginn providing lead guitar. That's the story here. Watt recorded his parts on May 5th, 1986, with Ginn's overdub recorded on July 8th, 1986. This was a silly project that Ginn was barely involved in, but I'm trying to be as complete as possible, so it is included here. I'm not a Madonna fan. The track is alright. 3 out of 10 for this. That brings us to SST 061, Gone. Let's Get Real Gone for a Change LP from 1986. We have reached Gone. Gone was started by Ginn as an instrumental side project in 1985. The lineup consists of Greg Ginn on guitar, Andrew Weiss on bass, and Sim Kane on drums. This album was recorded in late 1985. Gone would be Black Flag's opening act for their entire 1986 tour. I'm a big fan of this band, and I think this album is great. The songwriting is just credited to Gone here. The songs are a mix of punk and funk and move by nice and quick. Album opener Insidious Detraction is an absolute ripper, leading into Get Gone, that starts with a sample from an Elvis Presley recording session, which is where the album gets its title from. It was tough to choose a favorite on here, which was a nice change of pace from the previous records. I decided to go with Insidious Detraction. I just love that riff. Honorable mentions go to Watch the Tractor and Last Days of Being Stepped On. This one is very recommended, and I give it a 10 out of 10. Up next, SST 062, the Love Doll Superstar soundtrack compilation from 1986. This soundtrack features several SST bands, including Black Flag and the Meat Puppets covering No Values, among others, including Gone. All the Gone tracks are exclusive to this release, and these are what I'll be focusing on. There are 8 tracks total on the CD and cassette versions. The LP version only contains 3. The tracks are Slick's Thang, Lord of the Wasteland, Goodbye Forever, Atomic Jam, a new version of Black Flag's I Won't Stick Any of You Unless and Until I Can Stick All of You, March, Material Jam, and A Day in India on Acid. All songwriting is credited to Gone again. The tracks total around 15 minutes, so this is basically an EP's worth of material. Slick's Thang is straight up funk. Lord of the Wasteland has a little more of a rockin' psychedelic vibe, but is over in the blink of an eye. Goodbye Forever has a jazzy, discordant feel to it. Atomic Jam is straight up psychedelic. My favorite track, and the reason this release is essential, is the Black Flag cover. They change some things and make it shorter. It's absolutely killer. March is just that, a drum cadence with Ginn noodling. Material Jam is all happy and upbeat with weird scatting vocals, a strange vibe. Closing it out is A Day in India on Acid. Another psychedelic number. 5 out of 10 for the Gone stuff on this one. Aside from the Black Flag cover, the rest of the tracks are pretty weak. That brings us to SST 086, the Gone 2, but Never Too Gone LP from 1986. Gone popped into the studio on a break between tours and recorded their second album. The lineup is the same, and once again, all songwriting is credited to Gone. Greg Ginn did the artwork for this, and the quote on the back of the record is also credited to him, which reads, "In the absence of intimidation, creativity will flourish." This is a solid album and a good follow-up to the excellent first LP. I give the edge to the first one slightly, but there is a lot of good here. The experimentation from the Lovedale soundtrack is no more, and you're left with a punk-funk hybrid sound. I'm going to say my favorite track here is GTV, but honorable mentions go to album opener Jungle Law, New Vengeance, and Left Holding Bag. Just like the first record, it was tough to narrow it down. This ranks a very solid 9 out of 10, and is definitely recommended. These guys were very talented. The last release we will look at in this chapter will be SST 125, the Lawndale Sasquatch Rock LP from 1987. Lawndale was an instrumental band on SST. This LP features Greg Ginn playing guitar on the track March of the Melted Army Men. The insert explains that the song is about one of Eddie Munster's nightmares, where his tortured toys take their revenge. In his dream, he continues to maim and dismember them, but now his plastic soldiers emerge from their miniature snake pits and hot boxes, advancing hideously towards Eddie. Not until the song jumps into the poppy major key does Eddie awake, hearing his mother's call. The long solo by Greg Ginn represents a continuing psycho-sexual repression that haunts Eddie through his adolescence. Something like that. Anyway, it's a pretty cool track, 8 out of 10. If you dig Lawndale, you already own this. If you don't, then unless you are a Greg Ginn superfan, you don't really need to track this down. Ginn decided to end Black Flag in 1986. You would think he would then focus on Gone, but they were also done by the end of 1986. The other members went on to play with Henry Rollins in the Rollins Band. It was also around this time Ginn decided to take a step back from music and focus on running SST. I heard something about him also sustaining a basketball injury at this time, but I can't confirm this. Either way, we won't see new music from Greg until 1993. This is going to close out this discussion. Please join me for Part 4, 1993 to 1998. That will be a long ride. Thanks for listening to the Tune to Decay podcast. See you next time. Hello. You are listening to the Tune to Decay podcast. I am your host, and my name is Rob. Welcome to Part 4 of my deep dive into the discography of Greg Ginn. This time I will be covering all releases that came out between 1993 and 1998. After a 6-year period of inactivity, Ginn came back with a vengeance. The next 5 years were a very prolific period with over 30 releases coming out. Grab something to smoke, something to drink, something to eat, kick back. This is going to be extensive. A quick note on the chronology going forward. I wasn't able to find clear release dates for some of this material, as some are coming out on SST and some on Cruise, and all of it in a short period of time. I pieced some information together from press releases, but going forward, I'll be discussing the records in order of catalog number. First up, we have SST 299, the Poindexter Stewart College Rock EP from 1993. Aha! We have reached Poindexter Stewart. This is another alter ego of Greg Ginn. I have the press release for this record, which I'm going to read to you now. It is with mixed emotions that we announce to you the release of the Poindexter Stewart EP, featuring Poindexter Stewart, vocals, X Screaming Wounded, Greg Ginn, guitar, Black Flag, Dale Nixon, bass, Black Flag, My War LP, David Raven, drums. Since its inception over 3 years ago, this project has been wrought with behind-the-scenes controversy and maneuvering. After several delays, the College Rock EP was finally thought to be finished. Unbeknownst to the other members of the group, lead singer Poindexter Stewart had secretly shopped the finished tape around to major record labels. Stewart has apparently received a large advance, signing a multi-record contract with Warner Brothers as a solo artist, leaving the band that bears his name behind. I thought that we had finally finished the record and had launched this thing. Then Poindexter went out and fucked us all over. I thought Poindexter Stewart was a group, damn it. I'm tired of these arrogant lead singers, commented Ginn. Weary of legal hassles, SST label owner Greg Ginn, as well as being the group's guitarist and producer, decided to make a verbal rebuttal in the grooves of their college rock EP to what Ginn sees as the increasing arrogance of Stewart. Ginn added that, "Last time we tried to sue Warner Brothers, we couldn't find a lawyer to do it. Every lawyer is already in bed with them. So I said, fuck it, but I'm not going to let it pass without commentary." Ginn mixed this commentary into the first cut of their college rock EP. As to the future of Poindexter Stewart, who knows? Requests for interviews should be made to that other company. Okay, so obviously that was quite farcical. Clearly this project was meant as a joke. It's trying to be a parody of music you would find on college radio. For those too young to know what that is, they are small radio stations, typically at a university, run by students and playing alternative music. In this day and age, I'm not sure they even exist anymore, but they were rampant in the 80s and 90s. This record is also a jab at all the SST bands that jumped over to major labels. The joke is really funnier on paper, as the music on this release is not great. This came out on CD and 10-inch marbled vinyl. The band consists of Poindexter Stewart, also known as Greg Ginn, on vocals, Dale Nixon, also known as Greg Ginn, on bass, and on guitar, you have Greg Ginn. Rounding out the lineup is David Raven on drums. Written and produced by Ginn, with cover art by Ginn as well. A quote on the back attributed to Poindexter Stewart reads, "It's great to have a chance to make art." There are 4 tracks on this record, each a parody of a genre of music you would hear on college radio. First up is College Rock, the straight-up parody of college rock music. This song contains the hidden message from Greg as mentioned in the press release. I've done my best to interpret it. Turn that crap off. What the fuck is that? Motherfucking college rock? Shit. Unintelligible. Fuck. Turn that crap off. Turn on the fucking holy station or something. Not that fucking college crap. Get a life. Corporate motherfucking unintelligible. Fuck. Turn that crap off. Unintelligible. Alrighty. I think Greg really dislikes college rock. Next track is College Jelly Brain, which is the parody of industrial music, as it's basically an industrial remix of the college rock song. Track 3 is Reality, which is like a goth rock parody with a cool bass line. Way to shred, Dale Nixon! Reality Groove closes this one out and appears to be a parody of avant-garde music. This project is funny on paper, but almost painful to listen to. I assume that was the intention, so nice job, Greg. Nonetheless, this remains one of his worst projects. There is no favorite song, and it ranks a 2 out of 10 purely for the humor. This is not recommended. Up next, SST 300 Gone, the Criminal Mind LP from 1993. In addition to the Poindexter Stewart EP and a bunch of solo releases on Cruise, Ginn also resurrected Gone with the new lineup. He is on guitar, Steve Sharp is on bass, and Gregory Moore on drums. There is no songwriting credit, so I assume it is attributed to just Gone. The CD version contains 3 bonus tracks, Pump Room, Spankin' Plank, and Piled One Higher. This is the version I have. I really like the old Gone stuff, and while this is a little different, I still really enjoyed this record. I actually had a hard time picking a favorite, but decided on Snagglepuss. Poor Losers, Smoking Gun, and Freeney were all in the running as well. Gone fans shouldn't be disappointed in this one. I'm giving this an 8 out of 10 and would say it is recommended. Moving on, we have CRZ 028, the Greg Ginn Payday EP from 1993. This is the first solo single using the name Greg Ginn. It contains 2 tracks from the forthcoming Getting Even LP, as well as an industrial remix of Payday. This was released on CD as well as 12-inch vinyl. All songs by Greg and is produced by him as well. The band on this recording is Greg Ginn on vocals, guitar, and bass, and David Raven on drums. Gregory Moore is credited with additional toms on intro. Let's look at the tracks. It's weird to lead off your single with an industrial remix of the title song, but that is what Ginn decided to do. Since I'm going to talk about the other two tracks on the next release, I'm going to skip them here and only focus on the industrial remix of Payday. The remix is okay. It is not better than the original version. A sticker on the 12-inch reads, ex Black Flag and Gone guitarist Greg Ginn, Payday 12-inch, featuring industrial strength remix for you industrial DJ types. 3 out of 10 for the remix. It is the only unique track on here, so unless you are a Ginn superfan, you can skip this and get the Getting Even LP instead. Speaking of which, up next is CRZ029, the Greg Ginn Getting Even LP from 1993. This is the first solo album bearing the name Greg Ginn, produced by Greg and all songs written by him as well. The lineup is him on guitar, bass, and vocals. Yes, he handles all vocal duties on here, and they are angry and shouty. Drums are credited to David Raven. Some say it is a drum machine, others say it is live. One review says the drummer played without cymbals, but you can hear cymbals, so I have no clue. There are drums on the record, let's leave it at that. This is as close to Black Flag as it gets as far as solo material goes. If you are a big fan of the Flag, this is worth a listen. There are 14 tracks here. Musically, it's mostly angry punk rock. Most tracks clock in at 2 minutes or less. There are a couple stinkers here, but the majority of this ranges from good to great. The first 4 tracks are all stellar. The original version of Payday found here is way better than the single remix. Somebody's gonna motherfucking pay indeed. Pig Motherfucker, which can also be found on the Payday single, gets favorite track from this record and reminds us the hatred of cops was still strong in 93. That theme comes back later on the record with the excellent Yes Officer. There's a cool instrumental near the end called Short Fuse. Album closer, Crawling Inside, begs the question, how was I to know? Overall, this is a solid record. I'm giving it a solid 8 out of 10, and I think the good far outweighs the bad here. Check it out and decide for yourself. Next we have CRZ032, the Greg Ginn Dick LP from 1993. 4 months after the Getting Even LP, Ginn is back with his second solo album. As with the previous record, all songs written and produced by Greg. The lineup is mostly the same. There are 4 instrumentals on this one, and they feature the new Gone lineup of Steve Sharp on bass and Gregory Moore on drums. 13 tracks total. The music style is a little more varied. There's still some angry punk rock, but also some funky discordant stuff and some slow trudges. Ginn was getting into electronic music around this time, and that influence comes through more in the form of an industrial feel to this record, even though that is not the influence or intent. I mostly dig this record, but I don't think it is better than Getting Even. I actually heard this one first and didn't like it much on the first listen. It has grown on me quite a bit over the years, though. The 4 instrumentals are all pretty good. They wouldn't be out of place on a Gone record, but they work well here. The single from this record was Don't Tell Me. It's catchy, but not as good as Payday. Favorite track goes to You Wanted It. There are some stinkers on this one, and that drives my rating down a bit. It's a solid 6 out of 10, maybe even a 7, but few tracks hit the great mark. If you like Getting Even, check this one out too. I have the press release for this one, which I'll read to you now. Every time I sit down to do an interview, I start to get this feeling that I could be writing a couple more songs in the time I'm spending doing this. Well, folks, here is one whole new Greg Ginn album, 13 new songs, and 6.5 less interviews. And Dick, for which we absolutely promise there will be no bad puns, is that album. Dick is the second Greg Ginn album in 4 months, and rather than rehash the same old, a favorite recording transgression that does not appear in the Ginn Testament, he has produced a record that is wider and denser, though no less frenetic. 4 of the tracks are short, glowering instrumentals, whilst chaser racers like You Wanted It are no less brooding in their speediness. A high contrast to the previous album, Getting Even, which, when pushed, Ginn describes as something that I laugh at a lot. Dick may not have so much zany stuff, but the energy and the force is equal. Ginn's extended service as the sole guitarist and spiritual leader of the seminal West Coast bands Black Flag and Gone have been well documented elsewhere. Past history, maybe, but there's no denying the influence these bands had then, and more importantly, the influence they have on current music. Based on the vitality of Dick and the previous solo album, there's no earthly reason why the influences shouldn't continue, albeit with Ginn acting in a solo capacity. These are fresh, provocative songs, and somebody's sure to pick up on how commanding they are. In the period twixt, I would like to note that it says on the sheet of paper, the press release, in the period TWIXT. So that's what I'm reading to you. In the period twixt Black Flag and this solo work, Ginn has been overseeing the affairs of SST Records and its two sister labels, Cruise and New Alliance. However, not once has Ginn abandoned his music. Every day he works, every day he plays, and now, having access to his own studio, he has the ability to rehearse and record in the same space. You get the impression that, as far as he is concerned, there are no barriers between the work and play ethics. This may go a long way to explaining the frequency and normity, take your pick, of Ginn's recorded output. One wag, reviewing a Black Flag album, suggested that they slow down their releases so that other bands, artistically, would have time to catch up. The same words could equally apply to Ginn's solo work. As previously stated, Dick is his second album in quick succession, and you can bet your booties that the time he puts in at Casa Destroy, the self-owned studio, will see the light of day at the first available opportunity, and there will be no watering down of the contents. Dick is proof enough of that fact. So there you have it. Time for you Richards to literally open your doors to the new Ginn album, or get Dick all in the way of new exciting music. And there you have two awful puns as well. So, we lied, except about the music, of course. Following that, we have CRZ 034, the Greg Ginn Don't Tell Me EP from 1994. Hot on the heels of the Dick LP comes this 4-song remix EP, available on 12-inch red vinyl or CD. All songs written and produced by Greg Ginn. Lineup is the same as the LP. Hype sticker reads, Ex-Black Flagger Greg Ginn wrenched you with Payday and Poindexter Stewart. Now he hammers you with Don't Tell Me. Industrial DJs cuts 1 and 2. Alternative DJs cut 3. Techno experimental cut 4. The 4 songs are an industrial remix of Don't Tell Me from the Dick LP, which features additional drums from Gregory Moore. It's okay, but goes on for far too long. The following track is a slightly shorter instrumental version of the Don't Tell Me remix. Yes Officer from Getting Even shows up in a remix version, and this is my favorite from this EP. An experimental techno remix of You're Going to Get It from the Dick LP rounds this out. Future Confront James singer Richard Ray shows up here doing some background vocals. Overall, this EP is weak. I give it a 3 out of 10 and would say it is for the hardcore Ginn fans. Next up, we have a guest appearance on CRZ 035, Rig, Belly to the Ground album from 1994. I guess I forgot to mention at some point in the late 80s, Ginn founded Cruise Records to have his own label separate from SST. This label was the home of all the Greg Ginn solo releases and several other artists. Rig put out 2 records on Cruise. This was the first one and Ginn produced it. He makes a guest guitar appearance on the track Buried Alive. I haven't listened to this whole record, just the track with Greg. It is definitely noisy industrial metal a la Ministry. If that is your thing, then this track and probably this whole record are worth checking out. This is a 5 out of 10 for me though, and I recommend it to the hardcore fans. 1994 continues with CRZ 036, Greg Ginn, Let It Burn Because I Don't Live There Anymore LP. Ginn returns with his 3rd solo full-length in less than a year. I have the press release for this one. I'm going to read it to you now. In his uniquely bombastic manner, Greg Ginn is back with his 3rd solo album in less than a year. Let It Burn Because I Don't Live There Anymore is about as subtle as nuclear war. The thundering rhythms and balls-out attacks are Armageddon for the gray matter. This wicked recording will frighten your mom, scare your pets, and the neighbors will hate you for it. Writer, producer, musician, hardcore icon, indie record company overlord, and basketball aficionado, Greg Ginn continues to deliver. His music embodies sheer rage and angst, as it did with Black Flag and does with Gone. On his solo recordings, Getting Even, Dick, and now Let It Burn, Greg goes for the jugular and stays there for long enough to reduce even the toughest guys to useless heaps of flesh on the floor. Recovery is optional. Ginn will begin a 5-week tour of North America this summer in support of his recent releases. Okay, well, clearly that tour was 30 something years ago, so you can ignore that part. However, um, all songs written and produced by Greg Ginn. There are 13 tracks on this one. Like the last album, the music style is more varied here. 8 tracks featured a lineup of Ginn on guitar, bass, and vocals, with Jimmy Hunter and Eric Blitz on drums. These 8 are the best tracks on here, ranging from good to great. They're mostly in the angry punk vein of Getting Even. My favorite is Going to Venting, but Lame Excuses and Taking the Other Side came in close. 3 instrumental tracks featured a lineup of Ginn on guitar and bass, and Andy Between Us on drums. Andy is going to come up frequently, and for the life of me, I don't know if I'm pronouncing his name right, so from here on out, he will just be referred to as Andy B. If anybody can correct my pronunciation, let me know. These tracks really feature the heavy electronic influence that will be explored on upcoming releases. 2 more instrumental tracks featuring the new Gone lineup, and that is a wrap on this one. There are definitely some weak songs on here, but I think this album is better than Dick. It's not as solid as Getting Even, so I'm giving this a high 7 out of 10. This one is recommended for the Black Flag fans. Another guest appearance is next, this time on NAR 110, Dingle, Red Dog LP from 1994. Warning: I don't know shit about this band or this release. It came out on New Alliance Records on CD and cassette. It seems like they only did one album for the label. So this is experimental psychedelic music that goes off into jam band territory and avant-garde as well. What does this have to do with Greg Ginn? Glad you asked. Ginn plays guitar on 5 tracks on this release. They are Hot Dinglewood, Fred Lane, Fleas, Journey on a Davenport, and Mambo Samba. Some songs have male vocals, some female, and some have no vocals. This is sort of like experimental music for deadheads. Definitely not my thing. I've heard some people praise this, but I think it's pretty weak. No favorite track, 3 out of 10 on this one for me. That brings us to SST 303, the Gone Smoking Gun EP from 1994. I have the press release for this, and I'm going to read it now. This is dated April 28th, 1994. Hello, here is the latest acid garage release for A Violent Planet from Gone. It's a remix of the volatile Smoking Gun in Wasco. This musical rampage of ballistic proportions is highly recommended for adventurous DJs and connoisseurs of excellent driving music. Greg Ginn and company are currently touring Greg Ginn's solo stuff, but there's rumor of another tour later this year. Enjoy the sound of Gone, and spread the word that this is available now. This was released on CD and 12-inch vinyl and is the remix companion EP to The Criminal Mind from the year before. The lineup is the same as the LP, produced by Greg Ginn. No songwriting credits again. This features 3 remix versions of songs from the Criminal Mind LP. The CD version contains all 3 studio versions as bonus tracks. Smoking Gun and Wasco kicks it off and their remix grooves along nicely. A-side ends with Snagglepuss remix, which also has a good groove and some wild saxophone from future Mojack member Tony Atherton. Side B contains the 8-minute Freeney remix. Again, it is groovy and on the psychedelic side. I don't really have a favorite on here and find this EP a bit unnecessary. 4 out of 10 for this one, definitely for the hardcore Ginn fans only. Jumping ahead a bit, we have some more Gone coming up with SST 306, the All the Dirt That's Fit to Print LP from 1994. I have the press release for this one. I'm going to read it to you now. The new Gone record, All the Dirt That's Fit to Print, is an aggressive instrumental recording from the ruthless trio that begot the Criminal Mind and stunned DJs like a taser with their Smoking Gun remixes. Greg Ginn was the mastermind behind Black Flag and is responsible for SST, Cruise, and New Alliance Records. From 1987 to 1993, Ginn lay dormant like some tropical volcano, and then blam, lava everywhere. There's a slew of new solo releases, as well as the resurrection of Gone from that nebulous black hole where bands seem to go. Ginn just reached in, fished around for a while, and pulled out 2 amazing southern gents with maniacal musicianship and glistening nose jewelry named Steve Sharp and Gregory Moore. The new Gone record won't improve your sex life, prevent carjackings, or put an end to world hunger, but it's a step in the right direction. All the Dirt That's Fit to Print is a mind-bending adventure with lots of psychedelic shit going on, It's acid garage music for the 90s. It's a big, bad, wondrous, and nasty recording, sort of like experimental jazz, ambient rock, and a bit of the old thrash and a Cuisinart. Caution, these compositions may result in cerebral surges for skate rats and MBAs. This is sort of the companion LP to The Criminal Mind. It is the same lineup, produced by Greg, no songwriting credits, recorded at Greg's studio Casa Destroy, with cover art that almost fits like a puzzle piece with the Criminal Mind cover. Another similarity is they both have a slight electronic industrial vibe. Much like the last record, this one is also really good. There are a couple of weak moments, but picking a favorite was tough. There were several in the running, but I went with Cattywampus. Upward Spiral, 39051, and Damage Control were all runners up. If you like The Criminal Mind, you will like this one. Low 8 out of 10 on this one from me. Following that, we have SST 305, Confront James, Test 1 Reality LP from 1995. I think the Just Do It EP may have come out before this, but since it is a remix EP and its catalog number is later, let's just start here. I'm going to be blunt and say I'm not a fan of this project. I don't know how to describe it other than it is just not my thing. I do have the press release for this one. Let me read it to you. Who is Richard Ray, and where does he come from? And how did he meet up with Greg Ginn? The two musicians, recording under the enigmatic name Confront James, have released their first full length album, Test 1 Reality. Not only is this one of the most unusual and catchy song collections that the prolific Ginn has released during his recent period of frenzied productivity, Test 1 Reality represents the burgeoning presence of Ray, whom you may have heard in Ginn's You're Gonna Get It remix, a hydra headed, multi range, surreal, soulful, emotive singer. Little is known about Richard Ray, except that this calm, reserved in appearance singer from Los Angeles suddenly changes into an explosive, controlled, schizophrenic voice performer when in the recording studio, seamlessly mixing a self performed choir Greek chorus of diverse voices. Ray sometimes croons sweetly with a yearning, gospel reggae searching quality, then at other times drops into a distorted basso profundo that is more hardcore than ordinary funk or pure punk. Connoisseurs of subversion might already recognize the often imitated Greg Ginn, whose jagged, molten, anti cliche guitar shards have been expressed in disparate projects like Gone, October Faction, Tom Tricoli's Dog, and Black Flag. In the past year alone, he's released 3 full-length albums under the name Greg Ginn, Getting Even, Dick, and Let It Burn, as well as 2 albums by his beyond jazzy, metal, melto, industrial funk, alter ego, altered consciousness, industrial combo, Gone, The Criminal Mind, and All the Dirt That's Fit to Print. And that's not even counting the various mini album remixes under both names, or the literally hundreds of unreleased tracks that Ginn has been recording during the last few years with engineer Andy Betweenus at Casa Destroy Studios. But nothing Ginn has done before sounds quite as freaky as Confront James' Test 1 Reality. On the hypnotic, momentum building, dance trance swirl of In Another Something, Ray sings, Maybe hearing things, I got a weird feeling about something, as Ginn's juicy, sweet, sour guitar squeals against a compulsive, ominous groove, as the mantra, the walls are closing in, eerily repeats. Ray shouts a bizarre non sequitur. I got these clothes at a backyard sale. The title track, Test 1 Reality, is a militant, upstepping clearing of the mind, like an even angrier, harder, and more modern version of Gil Scott Heron's The Revolution Will Not Be Televised. Similarly, Just Do It transcends Nike's dull TV commercial advice and instead offers affirmation amidst the mechanized chaos. You gotta press to survive. A more dreamy, yet still heavy vibe is reached in Ecstatic, which begins with Betweenus's infected, intricate electro drum marching band beats and later Ginn's rigid, spinal bass, while Ray exhorts, testifies. In this world, there are a lot of people who try to dim your experience, who try to say you can't be happy. Be happy. You can be ecstatic. This is dance music that makes as much sense at a house party as it does in the pit or at a rave. Confront James is also one of those rare cross cultural collaborations in these alternative yet segregated 90s. Critics will have a fun time writing things like Sly Stone meets the Stooges or Fishbone jams with Jerry Garcia. One can only hope that this is the beginning of more breaking down of barriers between the punk, rap, funk, metal, jazz, industrial, art, rock scenes. Confront James can also be heard on Just Do It, a collection of radically altered remixes, which also features two songs not available on Test 1 Reality. Okay, so we have 10 songs here. I have the vinyl, and the label says both 1993 and 1995 on it. So maybe it was recorded in 93 but not released until 1995. It also says all words by Richard Ray and music by Greg Ginn. As the press release says, they are mixing dance music with punk, funk, rock to create some pretty lousy tunes. I'm not sure who the audience was or is for this, but if you like this or check it out and like it, hit me up and tell me why, please. 2 out of 10 for this because it's somehow better than October Faction. No favorite song from this one. Next up, SST 309 Confront James Just Do It EP. The back of this record says this came out in 1994. I suspect this came out quietly before the LP in 1995. I also suspect the LP was really meant for 93 based on the label. Anyway, let's get into this. The lineup, songwriting, and production are all the same as the Test 1 Reality LP. 6 tracks on the vinyl, 7 on the CD, which adds the radio edit of Just Do It. The back cover says, Just Do It, Extended Mixes, and that is exactly what we have here. 4 extended remixes from Test 1 Reality and 2 new tracks. Somehow, this is definitely worse than the full length. The tracks go on for an eternity. There are moments when you are high that some of the instrumental bits are almost grooving, but most of the time I wish I was listening to anything else. No favorite track on here. 1 out of 10 for this one from me. Coming up, SST 314 Confront James, Ill-Gotten Hatred CD from 1995. Hot on the heels of their last 2 releases, Confront James released yet another full length. Once again produced by Greg Ginn, the lineup is the same, and all songs and words are by Richard Ray and music by Greg Ginn. 14 new tracks here. There is a darker vibe on this album than the previous 2. It doesn't improve this project very much. This record is better than the previous Just Do It, but it is no better or worse than Test 1 Reality. Once again, if you are a fan of this project, hit me up and let me know why. No favorite track on this one. 2 out of 10 for this one. Next, we take a break from Confront James, and we have SST 316 Whore House CD from October 1995. This is the first album from new band Whore, another entirely instrumental project. Ginn has talked about finding electronic music in the early 90s and going to raves and various techno shows. The influence was slowly creeping into the 93 releases and explored further with Confront James. I would describe this particular Whore record as Gone meets techno. There's funky bass lines and lots of solos and noodling. I'm generally not a fan of electronic music or techno, but I do dig this album. There's fast, slow, and mid-tempo songs, so it stays pretty interesting. All songwriting is by Greg Ginn. The lineup is Ginn on bass and guitar and Andy B on percussion. Since he's only credited with percussion, I have to assume the drums are programmed. I can't confirm that, it's just my guess. 13 tracks here. It was a nice change of pace to have to narrow down a favorite. I went with Stiff Opposition because it was actually stuck in my head for a bit. Honorable mentions go to Reptilian Bastards, Changing of the Guard, and News of a Killer. I don't think this is a perfect record, but I do think it is worth checking out for Ginn fans. I'm going to give this a 7.5 out of 10. Coming up, we have SST 319, The Gone, Damage Control 12-inch EP from 1995. This is a 2-song remix EP from Gone, produced and written by Ginn. A-side is a remix of Damage Control from All the Dirt That's Fit to Print. The back cover erroneously states that the original version is from The Criminal Mind. It features Tony Atherton from Mojack on saxophone. Otherwise, the lineup is the same with Gary Ellis providing additional percussion. B-side is a remix of a song called Harm's Way. I can't find an original mix of this anywhere, so this is exclusive to this single. It seems Ginn was really into putting out these remix singles for a while. We'll see one more soon. Personally, I can take them or leave them. Only recommended for the hardcore Ginn fans. 5 out of 10 for this one from me. Following that, we have got SST-320, the Mojack Merchandising Murder CD from 1995. Yet another new project to debut in 1995. This is another instrumental band, and the sound here is kind of like the jazz version of Gone. The lineup consists of Greg Ginn on guitar, Steve Sharp from Gone on bass, Tony Atherton on sax and clarinet, and Andy B on percussion. The drums sound programmed to me, but I'm not positive. Ginn handles the production, and once again, has me digging something I would never listen to normally. The tunes are interesting, and it sounds fresh and exciting. There's 13 tracks on this, and I'm pleased to say it was tough to pick a favorite. I decided to go with Snide Remark. Runners-up were Ghetto Reporters, Corporate Welfare, and acid-dropping Nobel Prize winner for having an incredible title. This is probably not for everyone, but I think it's worth a listen. 7.5 out of 10 for this one. Up next, SST-322, Confront James, Chemical Exposure, 12-inch EP from 1995. This is the companion remix EP to the Ill-Gotten Hatred CD and features 4 remixes of tracks from that record. The lineup and songwriting remains the same, once again produced by Greg Ginn. The remix tracks are Ill-Gotten Hatred and Bookpacking on side A, and Skilled Technician and Magic Man on side B. This was the last remix EP to come out, and once again, I'm not sure who the audience for these was exactly. As I've mentioned, I'm not a fan of this project, and this remix EP didn't change my mind. I don't have much else to say about this one. This ranks right along with the rest of the discography, sitting at a 2 out of 10. Following that, we close out 1995 with SST-324, Screw Radio, Talk Radio Violence CD. Screw Radio was a radio show hosted by Greg Ginn in the early 90s. I'll be getting into that soon when the best of disc comes up. There was also Screw Radio, the musical project. That's what this is. They released 2 albums, this being the first. It is instrumental music with clips from the radio show edited over it. Musically, this is similar to 90s Gone with more of a techno element. The lineup here is Greg Ginn on guitar and bass and Andy B on percussion. Again, I'm not sure if it's live drums or not. Andy, if you hear this, reach out to me. They credit Poindexter Stewart with vocals because Ginn uses the character on the radio show. Produced by Ginn, music by Ginn. I'm very lukewarm on this project. Musically, it is decent, and even gets into some good grooves from time to time. The samples sink this for me. They are repeated ad nauseum in every track, and quickly get on my nerves. There are 17 tracks, and it runs nearly an hour long. Funniest track title is That Crack Smokin' Mayor is Back. I find this to be better background noise instead of a fun musical experience. 4 out of 10 for this one. Not really recommended unless you are a Ginn superfan. Moving on, we have SST-313, Gone, Best Left Unsaid CD from 1996. New year, new Gone record. I have the press release for this one, so let's take a look at that. Instrumental music is very much the rage now, as affluent hipsters need soothing, quiet cocktail lounge music to relax and massage away the guilt. As long as it's not too loud to talk over, then it must be jazz, these hepcats figure. Well, Gone will have none of that on Best Left Unsaid. Gone obliterates escapist nostalgia with present tense noise and passion. It can't be retro when it's this loud. Rather than purvey a sentimental, watered-down imitation of older jazz idioms, the musicians in Gone are inspired by the evolving explorations of jazz masters, rather than merely duplicating something already done. By pushing the current technology of electronic distortion, for instance, guitarist Greg Ginn is able to work with a fresher and more dramatic variety of sounds than, say, Kenny G trying to muzak something up Charlie Parker did first. In reality, this is the most overtly heavy metal and punk sounding of all the Gone releases, although Gone tends to take obvious labels like jazz and funk and techno and noise and supersede them with superior, heavy, and fluid musicianship. The chords and rhythms are deceptively simple, locked into earth-rooted, hard, funky grooves courtesy of bassist Steve Sharp, drummer Gregory Moore, and percussionist Andy Betweenus. It's the arrangements, the production, and the overall extremely heavy clarity of sound that takes this music to a non-linear, non-literal level. Second Gunman and Stray Bullet are pounded with metallic, hard rock power chords against Ginn's alternating melodic and squealing lead guitar. We Have Pogs and Hot Headed Butchers have a hyped up popcorn machine of hip hop rhythms by Moore, Sharp, and Between Us. Bomb Plot Case starts off with bass, drums, and a clean, serpentine guitar before a rumble of thick, saturated guitars blows the song up. The closing track, Hostile Witness, with its eerie, feverish string bends, creates the frantic, siren like paranoia that its title suggests. In fact, each of Gone's newspaper headline like song titles, besides dropping snide hints and telling stories with subtle clues, manage to imply more in a brief phrase, "My name is on the masthead, but," than most babbling lyricists come up with in a year. Okay, so we have 11 new tracks here. This record still maintains the 90s Gone sound, but there's definitely a more prominent dance and techno influence in the background sounds and production. Of all the Gone records so far, for me, this one is at the bottom. It is not a bad record, but it doesn't hit right for me. There are some really great tracks on here, such as Stray Bullet, We Have Pogs, and Second Gunman, with album closer Hostile Witness being my favorite from this album. This honorable mention goes to My Name is on the Masthead But for having a bizarre title and an incredibly annoying beep sound in it. I'm going to give this one a 6 out of 10. Gone fans should still check this out. Next up, SST 326 Whore, Slow and Sleazy CD from 1996. This is the second album from this project and it lives up to its title. The music is definitely slower than the first album. The techno influence is pretty much relegated to background noise on this one. All songs written and produced by Greg Ginn. The lineup is the same as the previous record. 12 tracks on this. I am a fan of this band, but I'm not a fan of this release. It's very mellow, which is fine, but it's also pretty boring. The first few times I listened to it, I had a hard time differentiating between the songs. This does make for some good background noise, though. Favorite track goes to Modem Militia. I'm giving this one a 4 out of 10 as it just doesn't do it for me. Up next is a guest appearance, SST 328, Hotel X, Uncommon Ground CD from 1996. Hotel X is a world music jazz group founded in 1992 in Richmond, Virginia. They released 6 albums on SST. This release was their 5th for the label. The title track, Uncommon Ground, was written by Greg Ginn, and he also plays guitar on it. Frequent Ginn collaborator, Andy B., is credited with drum programming on the track as well. The song is jazzy with a techno-sounding drum beat. It's got a groove to it. I'd say it is kinda like Mojack meets Whore. Not bad. Better if you were high. 5 out of 10 for this track. This one is definitely for the diehards or if you like this genre of music. The record is much more mellow after the Ginn track. Following that, we have SST 330 El Bad, Bad Motherfucker CD from 1996. We've reached another new project. I have the press release for this one, so let's go over it. Life is a Holocaust party, says El Bad. Come over and watch it on pay-per-view. We're all on our way to the gas chamber anyway. No use pretending otherwise. But at the same time, why should that stop our fun? El Bad's sense of fun comes from the attack on authority itself, as opposed to the usual flight from opposition. In case you didn't get the point, El Bad is calling their debut CD Bad Motherfucker. It's not some stringy-haired folky swooning into a paper cup playing banjo. It's loud. It rocks, dude. Can you handle that? What's more, can you handle the gigantic, handsome, in-your-face, yet somehow teddy bearish Reese on vocals? He may be trying to make you laugh, but Reese has also got this operatically powerful, personable voice that has a sustaining low growl that when combined with guitarist Greg Ginn's maxed out fuzz, cause a third buzzsaw hum. Although Greg Ginn has gotten more attention in the last year for his avant-jazz instrumental with Mojack and Gone, or his hard dance electro beat grooves with Whore, or the freaky psychedelic soul of Confront James, it is with El Bad that Ginn recalls his classic punk metal hard rock period with Black Flag and his solo albums the most. This is some of the fastest stuff Ginn's ever done. Joined by drummer Gregory Moore, who can play heavy like John Bonham, but also fast and swinging and solid. Like much of Ginn's work from the past few years at Long Beach recording studio Casa Destroy, it's self-produced by Ginn and engineered by Andy Between Us, yet Bad Motherfucker has a different, more natural room and drum sound compared to, say, Screw Radio's ultra-techno-logical rush of clarity. The music recalls Metallica before they started doing power ballads, or the Misfits without the Dracula shtick, or Ministry without the machines, juxtaposed with intense, short, compact songs like Johnny Braveheart and Mind Warp, or several quick, hilarious, and trenchant comedy bits a la Cheech and Chong or Richard Pryor. Radio Announcement and Stadium are all too realistic fake radio ads for JC 2000, or the Second Coming of Jesus Christ, which in this case appears to be a cross between a Pearl Jam concert and a monster truck rally. During Girlfriend, Reese confronts the consequences of faked orgasms. Stuck in the ticket line, he and uncredited special guest Poindexter Stewart grovel under the sweat of celebrity. Most of the 17 tracks are barreling punk industrial metal gallops like Mental Anguish or Who Jumped Jello, which is based on the notorious attack of singer Jello Biafra that occurred a couple years ago. It's synthetic, and the twisted erotic love song Boy and Cat vary the mood with hypnotic interplay, but one thing El Bad never is on Bad Motherfucker is laid back. Alright, so now that we have heard from SST, let's talk about this. All music by Greg Ginn. Musically, this is good to great. There's fast punk, thrashy stuff, Ginn metal. It bounces around quite a bit between them. Words and music by Reese. This is where my problem with this project lies. Reese looks like a cool guy. He's got a Dawn of the Dead shirt on in the promo photo, but his vocals really don't do it for me. I can't even put my finger on what it is I don't like about them, but they sink this project for me. That said, it isn't unlistenable. It's worth a try. Maybe I'm fucking crazy. Mind Warp and Who Jumped Jello are bangers. Favorite track is Going to Holocaust Party. Despite what SST says, the unfunny skits mixed in are just that, unfunny, but at least they are short. 6 out of 10 for this, but with better vocals, this would be an 8. Closing out 1996, we have SST 333, the Screw Radio I'm a Generation X CD. This is the second and final album from Screw Radio, the musical project. The lineup is the same as the last record. All music by Greg Ginn. 14 tracks on this one. I dig this one less than the previous record, and that one only got a 4 from me. Musically, this is definitely more avant-garde than the last one. That last one was similar to Gone. This one I'd compare more to the Horror Slow and Sleazy album, which was another record I wasn't crazy about. When you combine that with the ad nauseum samples, and you got a big miss from me. The best part about this is the title and ridiculous artwork. 3 out of 10 for this one, for the diehards and avant-garde fans only. We kick off 1997 with SST 342, the Screw Radio Best Of CD. Alrighty, we have reached Screw Radio, the radio show. I'm going to read you a blurb from the liner notes. The Screw Radio show, beginning twice a week on 97.1 FM in the Los Angeles area, eventually expanded to every night. After 6 months on the air, 92 to 93, the station was sold to a Vietnamese group, interrupting the show. Screw Radio will soon reappear online and elsewhere, currently on Pirate Radio. The excerpts comprising this document were taken from that 6-month period. The Screw Crew, led by host Poindexter Stewart, intersperses comedy with social, political commentary and other unusual entertainment as documented here. The show has proved to be prophetic, predicting the death of Kurt Cobain. True. It is believed that some of Poindexter Stewart's on-air comments about the record business cost him a solo deal, which was in the works with Matador Records, from which they subsequently backed off. Did Poindexter's midnight liaison with Liz Phair evoke the violent jealousy of one Jerry Cozy? Okay. So this is a 2-disc set with over 100 tracks. It is a mixed bag for sure. There are a lot of bumpers and ads. Some skits are funny, some are not. Some are boring or just plain out there. This is a curio for sure. I think the funniest thing on here is the Pearl Jam editorial. I'll give this a 4 out of 10. Recommended for SST collectors and Ginn superfans only. Following that, we've got SST 343, the Confront James Black Bomb Mountain CD from 1997. This is an interesting record. The band remains the same, Greg Ginn is still producing and writing the music, and Richard Ray is still writing the words. However, much of this record is the Whore House record, with Richard Ray singing over the instrumentals. Of the 16 tracks here, 8 are indeed repurposed Whore tracks with Ray. I have broken down the 8 tracks. Fundamental is Stiff Opposition. Black Bomb Mountain is Blood Evidence. Ball Bounce, Stand Still is Illicit Vehement. Black Bat is Crime Scene. Wake Up Knots is Not a Done Deal. Root Bound is Changing of the Guard. Wrench and Electric Toy Gun is Germ Warfare. I actually asked Greg about this, and he said nobody had pointed that out before, but he didn't really explain the reason behind it. I dig that Whore record, but like the rest of the Confront James material, I don't dig these songs here. Same goes for the 8 others. They call this music acid garage. It is really not my thing. If you dig the other records, you'll dig this one. It's worth a listen in that case. For others, this is for the Ginn superfans. I'm going to give this a 3 out of 10 because the Whore tracks do make this one better than the rest of the Confront James discography. Next we have SST 345, the Killer Tweaker Bees, the Tweaker Blues CD from 1997. Alrighty, new year, time for some new projects. There will be 3 one-off projects in 97. The Killer Tweaker Bees is the first. This project is Greg Ginn on bass and guitar. Written and produced by Greg. This is 11 tracks of feedback, jamming, and noodling. No drums, no vocals. I imagine this is what it sounds like when Greg is jamming alone. I personally do not care for this record. I think this may be the worst Greg Ginn project of all time. I love to listen to him play, but there is nothing catchy and nothing groovy here. It just goes on and on for 45 minutes and goes nowhere. The track titles are the best part about this release. Funny ones include The Government Protects Me, Rage Against Your Mother, and Now That I've Solved Society's Problems. I don't have much more to say about this one. I find it pretty boring. This seems like a high idea that went way too far. 1 out of 10 for this, and it is not recommended. Following that is SST 348, El Bad, Trick or Treat, CD from 1997. Here we have the second and final album from El Bad. The lineup is the same as the first record, but they have added Steve Sharp on bass for this one. All music by Ginn and lyrics by Reese, produced by Ginn. I was pretty lukewarm on the first record. Musically, I thought it was good to great, but I didn't vibe with the vocals. It's more the same feeling here, but I do not think this one is musically as good as the first album. There's some fast punk and a whole lot of metal to be found within the 14 tracks. Thankfully, only 1 skit on this one, but like the others, it is a dud. I'm going to say my favorite track is I Turned Into a Misfit. Other tracks that were in the running were Alien Invasion and Eternity for Men. I definitely don't like this one as much as the first, and I didn't love that one. I think a 5 out of 10 is fair for this one. It's listenable and far from the worst Ginn project. Coming up, we have got SST 352, Bias, Model Citizen CD from 1997. The second of 3 one-off projects from 1997 is Bias. This one is another instrumental project focusing on electronic music. It fuses hardcore techno with punk rock and has an almost industrial feel at times. 10 tracks on here, written and produced by Ginn. He also did the cover art. The band on this is Ginn on guitar and bass. He uses the Dale Nixon name here, Andy B on drums, and Ron Beck on keyboards. I'm really not a fan of techno or electronic music, but I dig what Greg does with it. The way he makes his guitar the focus really works for me. This mostly reminds me of wacky video game music. That is not a complaint, it's just the vibe I get. My real complaint is some of these songs get a little repetitive and would have benefited from being a little shorter. I also think a switcheroo was in order. I think this should have been the second Whore album, as it is much better than Slow and Sleazy and complements the House album well. But not my call to make, is it? I'm going to say my favorite song is Jack's Knife, which just slightly beat out Jury with No Peers. I'm going to give this a solid 7 out of 10, but I'm not really sure who to recommend it to besides Ginn fans, and even then, it will not be for everyone. After that, we've got SST 353 Get Me High, Taming the Underground CD from 1997. Get Me High is the third and final one-off band from 97. You guessed it, this is yet another instrumental project. Written and produced by Greg, who did the cover art as well. The band on this is Greg Ginn on guitar and bass, using the Dale Nixon name once again, Gregory Moore on drums, and Andy B on percussion. I'm not sure why a new band name was needed. This is basically a Gone record. Much like Bias should have been the next Whore record, this should have been the next Gone, and Best Left Unsaid should have been the new project. Just my 2 cents. Anyway, there are 12 tracks on here. Musically, it's very similar to the other 90s Gone records. If you enjoy those, you'll dig this. Ginn lets the bass shine on some of these tracks. Favorite track is going to album opener Trend Junkies, but album closer Bite the Hand was a close second. On top of being a solid record, there's some funny track titles including Nerd Alert and The CIA Got Me High. I'm going to give this an 8 out of 10 and say Gone fans need to check this out. Closing out 1997 is SST 359, the Mojack Homebrew CD. The sophomore album from Mojack has a whopping 20 new tracks, written and produced by Greg Ginn. This time the lineup is Ginn on guitar and bass. Steve Sharp is not on this record. Tony Atherton on sax and clarinet, Richie West on drums, and Andy B on percussion. There are several short little jam songs scattered throughout the record. Musically, it's more on the free jazz side of things with that Ginn tone dripping over everything. I don't dig this one as much as the first. The short jam songs actually bog this one down a bit for me. And I'm not saying that this is a bad record, I just find it a bit uneven. Favorite track goes to Creative Solution to Prison. Some runners-up were In Stitches, Carjack, and Filthy Comments. I'm going to go ahead and give this a 6.5 out of 10. I think it is overall weaker than the first album, but there is still plenty to enjoy here. We kick off 1998 with SST 344, the Gone Country Dumb CD. Gone returns in 98 with a stellar new album. Written and produced by Ginn, the lineup remains the same, and there are 14 new tracks. I think this is a huge improvement from Best Left Unsaid, which I felt was a little too experimental and not their finest hour. I don't think this is better than The Criminal Mind or All the Dirt That's Fit to Print, but it can sit comfortably beside them. Pentagon Expands is totally a rewrite of Black Flag's Kickin' and Stickin', but it works and gets my pick for favorite track. Hip Castro Conservative was a close second. This record is very solid, and if you like the other 90s Gone albums, you'll dig this one a lot. Some funny song titles include Cut Your Hair, Drink Coors, Rage Against Intelligence, and Punk and the Cash Narcotic, which is clearly a jab at the title of former SST label head Joe Carducci's book, Rock and the Pop Narcotic. Solid 7.5 out of 10 for this one, and it is definitely recommended to Gone fans. And as quick as we went into 1998 with the Gone record, we will now close out 1998 with SST 347, the Whore, a faster, more aggressive Whore CD. Whore returned with their third record, and much like how the last Gone album was a major improvement over its predecessor, the same can be said here. 17 new tracks written and produced by Greg Ginn. The lineup is the same. This is appropriately titled, as the hardcore techno influence is very present. This mixes punk and hardcore techno as effectively as the first album, but the electronic influence is much more pronounced here. This is the follow-up to the House album I was expecting and blows away the Slow and Sleazy record. I mentioned before, this isn't my genre of music, and without Ginn's guitar, I probably wouldn't seek this out. But his guitar is there, and I dig this almost as much as the House record. I'm going to give this a solid 7 out of 10. Favorite track is going to Credible Inquiry. Why Is the Hippie Happy was a close runner-up. If you dig this type of music, check this out. And if you don't, and you're just a Ginn fan, check it out anyway, you might be surprised. With that, We close out 1993 to 1998 and the 20th century in general. If you are still here, thank you. SST would face hardships and distributor problems in 1998 that effectively stopped new releases for several years. But do not fear, Greg Ginn will return in 2002, and I will be here to tell you all about it. Stay tuned, and thank you for listening to the Tuned to Decay podcast. Until next time.